Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. I bring a message of the truth amidst a world full of lies. I graduated from learning lies to seek the truth. Indoctrinated to be too blind to see the proof. I once was lost, but now I'm found, so I shine light. And everywhere I go is darkness, so I shine bright.
The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. Yahweh scoffs at them. Those are the lyrics of a psalmist named David, and I too am a lyricist named WesBlaze, and the name of this show is Uncommon Ground. We want to say thank you for joining us for this 34th episode, and it is the Challenger Hoax of 86, and I'm joined as always again by my good friend Sean. Good to be here with you, bro.
Hey, it's great to be here, WesBlaze. We're back again, going to discuss a little bit of some NASA shenanigans this week, and I think we've got some very interesting things to present, so I'm excited.
Yes, sir. Myself as well, because tonight we will take a deep dive look into an event portrayed on the world stage by an American space agency who are proven liars with a rap sheet of deceptions, right? And we will get a close-up and personal with, we'll get close-up and personal with some of the characters involved, and maybe even a little too close for comfort, but I think it's necessary in light of the words of the Apostle Paul in Ephesians 5:11, right? He says, do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And we already see a lot of people in the chat. I want to say what's up to some of the people here. Tyler Porter's here. I saw Royce Bell in the chat. Mr. Bear, Miss Amanda Herring is here. My lovely girlfriend, wildly unpopular country kid and country dad, as well as country fun. The whole country fam is here. Good to see y'all. Eric, Steven. Nice. Yeah, we got some people even commenting that they are in the age group that would have seen this event take place live, and the majority of them are saying they saw it in a classroom, right? So we'll get to talk about some of that tonight and how that was orchestrated purposefully and intentionally. We got
I would be in that age group. I was 6 years old in 86.
Were you? I was -2.
Yep. But I don't think they showed it to us. I was in first grade, so that would have been in a incredibly small country little school called Bowlegs.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that school wasn't one of the ones selected to have the satellite dish put on to be able to tune into this live. Like, I think they said 2,000 schools, maybe a lot more. We'll get over to it in the presentation. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. Thank you all for being here. We just want to say thank you guys who have continued to leave wonderful comments, just really amazing things you guys keep saying. And do we got a few of those we can take a look at?
For sure.
Let's check it out. Would you read a couple of them?
Yeah. So we had Aesop preach. He said he loved it. This is, I'm guessing, last week as he was watching us with our special guest, J.O. And then Josh Young, he said it's one of the best shows on TV, or excuse me, YouTube. 100%.
Word. Thank you, Josh Young. Aesop preach. Shout out. Much love. Miss Suzanne Jean Wilkins says, wow, thank you for being deep studiers and sharing this wisdom. So very valuable. Dash Rindar says, I love you guys. Much love to you too. And Gina Siska says, wow, I learned quite a bit from this episode. Thank you. Just some random comments pulled from multiple of our different streams that we've done. And
nice.
they've been very encouraging and inspiring. And so we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it definitely helps us in the algorithms when you guys have a chance to comment on our videos, even if it was from last season. It definitely helps us. So if you hear something we're talking about, you got something to say, drop a comment. You know, whether it's live or whether it's already, it's already done. It really helps us out. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll be kind of trying to get you guys to engage a little more with us throughout this episode as I ask you guys, what do y'all think of what we're presenting? Do you agree with it? On some of the information, we might be a little, we're going to have our biases, but some of it, we're going to just present the evidence, and some of it can be kind of conclusive. I think there will be some instances where we'll be like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the truth. And then other cases we might say, there's something to think about there. Can't say for sure. We don't have the ability to firsthand check it out. But there's a lot of stuff out there that we could compile and look through and come to some conclusions for ourselves. And so I look forward to doing that with everybody here tonight.
Yep. Also, big shout out to everyone that supports us on Patreon. We also have other ways that you can support us, and we're going to show you that right here. So you guys are welcome to check us out as soon as it pulls up here.
Yeah, links in the description, you guys. You got the Patreon option available. We do fairly regularly now this season. We're doing giveaways for the people that are involved with the Patreon. We even got some prizes that we're doing. Like a couple episodes ago, we gave away some stuff. And so, yeah, y'all check out the links in the description. If just a contribution directly isn't your type of thing, but you'd love to support what we're doing, we also have that Teespring store where lots of different merch is available. One cool thing is that YouTube just made available the option to add that shop integrated into the YouTube page and channel. And so if you scroll over next to my like playlists and the community tab, there should be one called shop. And now you guys can see all that without having to click off of YouTube. You can see our merch items. So check that out. We'd appreciate you.
Interesting. All right. Sounds a little bit like Lighthouse. That's interesting.
It does. Better is coming. Hashtag.
We want to give an update on the Firmament project. Nick has really been blowing it out of the park, making some incredible progress on this.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Shout out Nick over at Funky Monkey Peyton. Much love to you guys over there. And yeah, you're just doing some amazing stuff. I love those Firmament. If you there's a couple more slides, I think, before the clip. But we just want to show you guys a quick little update, not as lengthy as some of the ones we've had before. But this is an image of one of the pieces of the creation model of the Firmament project that we're building with Nick and our brother Eric. And Nick has got this put together for the underworld. If you guys might remember episode 18, it was called The Biblical Underworld, talking about Sheol, right, in the Hebrew, Hades in the Greek. And this is a segment that will go up underneath the level plane of the earth and the domes that we have surrounding it. And there's a fun little clip where he's just kind of showing a more 3D look at what he's got going on here. If you'd play that.
Yeah, you can even see a little bright spring of water.
That's right.
All right, we've got Sheol painted. Even got a bright spring of water.
Looks so good.
It really does. I'm super impressed with the lighting, doing some electronics in there with it. It's the next level. Nothing like has ever been done before in a creation model, physical representation like this. And so I'm super excited about it. Thanks again, Nick.
Thank you so much, Nick. That's right. Well, next slide.
Yeah, there's a couple more things maybe, I think, before we'll get into the presentation. Oh, this was the last thing I just wanted to remind you guys of is not only have we laid down presentations jam-packed full of scripture and observations and just examining evidence for a full first season. We're almost halfway through our second season now, but this episode in particular, I think would lay a good groundwork. If not, also the very first episode, Sky's the Limit. But I chose this one to remind you guys about that. If you haven't seen that episode already, it's a good kind of a prerequisite and companion to this episode that will help you understand where we're coming from on this kind of topic.
It's a good one. Yeah, that was fun.
Absolutely. But without further ado, we have the trailer teaser for this episode. 34, the Challenger Hoax of 86. Y'all check it out.
T-minus 21 seconds, and the solid rocket booster engine gimbal now underway.
Space missions, the most exciting thing that there ever was to happen. Right now, people don't even follow the space. I mean, they should make it exciting. I don't know how they could make us all watch again.
I remember watching the Challenger in 1986. My whole classroom watched, and then watching it explode, and teachers sort of trying to figure out what to do with everybody because it was so traumatic.
25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger.
We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public.
We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all out in public. I thought that was interesting wording from President Reagan there.
Not true.
Yeah. It's like, no, we're not lying. We don't lie. We don't do that. Says the liar. Well, so
Let me preemptively let you know we don't lie in case you ever ask yourself, do they lie? Let me let you know we've never lied.
That's not what a liar would say. They don't do that. Well, thanks again for being here, everybody. I'm excited to get into it. What do we have first on the agenda?
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. We got some fun stuff here.
For sure. So, just to show you guys here, a reusable spacecraft is a class of spacecraft that have been designed and with repeated launch, orbit, deorbit, and atmospheric re-entry in mind. This contrasts with the conventional spacecraft, which are designed to be expended. So they had a whole fleet at one point. I think they're all retired by now, and they've got different stuff coming out. But in April 12th, 1981 was Columbia. In Discovery was April 30th, 1984. Atlantis, October 3rd, 1985. And then you had the Challenger on January 28th, 1986, as well as Endeavour on May 7, 1992. So there was a 32-month gap between the Challenger disaster, where it exploded, spoiler alert, right? And the Endeavour didn't take place till 32 months later after that. And then many of you might remember that, it was actually the Discovery on September 29th of 1988, which was 32 months after the Challenger. So they had a big gap there in between. Many of you might remember, people that are closer to my age, younger crowd might know that in February 1st, 2003, there was another disaster called the Columbia, where the astronauts supposedly, also died in that one as well. But I don't remember it getting near the media coverage as the one we're going to talk about tonight, this Challenger. Do you, Sean? Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you.
No, not at all. 2003, that was, what were we all doing in 2003? It's like what? NSYNC was popular. The Scream movies were still being made, I think. People were just worried about Paris Hilton. But yeah, it was weird. People weren't focusing on this one like they did in 87. And it could be because, I don't want to speculate. We'll keep going.
That's all right. Yeah, there was even a disaster that wasn't a manned space flight that was headed to space in actual, going into the mission. But that was Apollo 1, where 3 astronauts also died during that event. But once again, you didn't get all the numerous documentaries and movies made like we're going to see have been made and produced for the Challenger disaster. So
that's right. That's right. Because 2003. They were still making documentaries and movies about the towers, the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
And we were going into Iraq and Afghanistan, and Bush was, CIA was showing yellow cake to Dave Chappelle. Yeah, that was a whole vibe back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So this one is just one that they repeatedly drilled and continue to do so. They drill this into the minds of the masses and invest everyone emotionally as much as they can into this so-called disaster. So let's take a little more of a look at it. That was the fleet that they had, and just some of the dates and the lineup and timeline of what they were working with. Would you read the official story here, Sean?
The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster was a fatal accident in the United States space program that occurred on January 28, 1986, when the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, leading to the death of all 7 crew members aboard. It was the first fatal accident involving an American spacecraft in flight.
All right.
And I guess they had to put in flight because, sorry, 1 second. Because you had the astronaut that died on the launch pad from, I can't remember his name right now, but the guy that hung the lemon.
Gus Grissom. Yeah, we'll talk about, he'll come up a couple times in this episode tonight too. But yep, that was during a test. That was a ground test when he died. Yep. So they weren't even, in the mission fully. And they burned him alive as far as I can understand. But that's the quote unquote official story. Here's 7 of the astronauts here that allegedly died, right? So
yeah,
from left to right, top to bottom, you got Ellison, Onizuka, and then you got the teacher Krista McAuliffe. You got the other guy there that's kind of a no-namer. A lot of people don't really remember him. And what's crazy is there's not a lot of information available on him. He might just be like the NPC of the group, but yeah, so his name was, I got it right here. Let me skip him for the second. The next one over was Judith Resnick, and then you got Michael J. Smith, and then you had Richard Scobie, as well as the last guy on the bottom right is Ronald E. McNair. And these guys are hailed as heroes that had died in service, basically.
Yeah.
But we might present some evidence to the
Right.
contrary.
Yeah, so a lot of people that still believe that this was a legit thing, they've heard us mention this a couple times, in the first few minutes of this broadcast. Just keep in mind, guys, that we're not trying to be disrespectful to them or their families. We're literally going to try to show you evidence that it's not what they told you. It's not. We're not mocking these people. We're not mocking NASA. We're just trying to reveal that the official narrative does not line up. Is that the best way to put it? Just does not line up.
That's right. Yeah. The only one that I couldn't remember the name of is Gregory Jarvis, third one from the left on the top row. And yeah, as I said, he's not very memorable just because there's not much information on him. We're going to look at a lot of information available on these other people, though. So
yeah. And if anyone thinks that those motorcycle helmets they're holding are actual astronaut helmets, we've got to talk, because that is literally a shoey helmet that costs you $500 that you buy at a motorcycle store. There is no sealant there. Yeah, I won't go on too much, and someone's asking in the live chat, they're asking about the background, how it's an ominous red. I will say this, that was a common photographer's background for like all of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They had these like vague colors that blended in with the gray. It's like all like behind most of the backgrounds at any professional photography studio they would have is something very akin to that. So I don't think they were trying to foreshadow any type of ominous foretelling.
Hey, it's possible, because I didn't even consider that. It does look smoky, like a fiery kind of thing going on. So it's possible.
Oh, hey, and still, this is not mocking these people. These people look hypnotized. Look, let me put this a little bit bigger. Look at these eyes. These people do not look I'm sorry. Anyway, that's all speculation, but they look absolutely hypnotized.
Yeah, you got to be to work for this company, I think. This alleged space agency, not a space agency, we say about the NASA. No astronauts should apply.
That's right.
But astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee died in 1967 during a pre-launch ground test for the Apollo 1 mission when the command module caught fire. So, as we said, the Challenger was said to be the first time that a manned space mission in flight actually resulted in an alleged fatal accident. But these guys were in a pre-launch ground test, and a flash fire overtook the command module during a ground test of all things. Like, they might as well have been in a simulation machine, and it catches fire. Something fishy might be going on there. So we'll revisit that a little bit later in the show. But
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, the immediate cause of the Challenger disaster, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the so-called official story once again, immediate cause was the failure of two rubber O-rings to seal a joint between the two lower segments of the right-hand solid rocket booster. This failure was due to severe cold, and it opened a path for hot exhaust gas to escape from inside the booster during the shuttle's ascent.
That was just at like 10,000 feet.
72 seconds up. That's all they got.
Was it even that high up? So maybe more like 60, 70,000 feet. Maybe. I don't even know if, either way, think about that. Think about what you just read. Like any person that's a professional O-ring manufacturer would tell you that, look, if this thing can't even withstand the cold temperatures of rapid change of 60,000 feet up in our atmosphere, there is absolutely no way in a vacuum with rapidly expanding heat and cold as they go in and out of the sun's light that it could possibly keep a seal on these vital component pieces of not only the rocket, but the interior cabin where it's pressurized. This is a live example of what would happen if there was not a firmament, which they can't penetrate anyway, and they could actually send a rocket or a shuttle into an atmosphere has no atmosphere, like a vacuum. All of these seals and rings on the windows, all the interior joints and locks, all of them would fail. This thing would literally, if it didn't explode, would just break apart like someone smashed a big Lego construction.
Yeah. And could you go back a few slides, like to the first one with the shuttles? I just want to point out real quick the months that they launched the shuttle fleets in their respective launches. So you got, April, August, October, and then the far right got May, and
Okay.
then Discovery in 1988 launched in September. So the majority of these are all in the spring or the fall months, later in the year when it's not quite as cold. But the Challenger and the Columbia, for example, when it exploded, they took place in the early months, still in winter. So I find that interesting. The two that they exploded were the ones that were in the cold temperatures. Like if the official story and the narrative of why they say it failed in the O-rings and whatnot because of the cold temperatures, it's almost as if it could have been done on purpose. That if they foreknew that a cold temperature would cause a failure in the rocket, then they've purposefully launched those in a colder month. Interesting.
Yeah, it's possible. So what's your theory? Because you and I haven't actually talked about motivation before we did the show. Do you think that this was an accident, or do you think this was intentionally a stage show?
I can't conclusively say 100% on did they
Because you and I we are in agreement that these actual shuttles don't have people in them, and they're not actually going into outer space. They're going into the southwest Pacific, southwest Atlantic, right?
Yeah.
So we already agree that they're not actually doing what they're told us they're doing. But with that given, do you think that it was an accident or intentional?
No, I definitely think that they did this on purpose. Yeah,
Really?
I think it was as part of the propaganda that they needed to, propagate, in the sense of they had done 25 manned shuttle missions by this point, and
With no problems.
with no deaths
Yeah.
on in flight during the mission, and they needed to invest people's emotions to make it real. They needed to maybe even set up a reason to take a break, right? That 32-month gap that they didn't do any more shuttle missions for those two and a half years almost.
So you say similar to like when SpaceX occasionally has a rocket that blows up trying to re-enter or trying to get back to the launch pad or whatever. It's just it heightens the failure itself, heightens the drama.
It does. And another thing is that it had been, 20 plus years at this point that they had been doing NASA missions, and they hadn't been back to the moon in nearly 20 years. And so the excitement, I think, overall, the general morale of the American people in the world just kind of wasn't as interested as they once were in the NASA missions. And they needed to garnish some, produce some attention and, get people's eyes on it again and get them interested, even if it meant some trauma-based mind control.
Yeah, I know some really classic, iconic space movies came out in the 80s. Especially for children.
Yeah.
So I know that in the same, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but in the same year, WesBlaze, there was a movie called Space Camp that came out, and it's in 1986, and it came out, and it was had Joaquin Phoenix and other people you might recognize, but yeah, it was a pretty popular little movie for kids called Space Camp, and it was about kids going to space camp.
Yep, they love to target the children. They know that they are the most easily manipulated and molded and impressionable. And so the children, we'll see in this presentation too what they've done with the Challenger and how they engaged the schools across the nation. But yeah, which slide were we on after this one? Here we go. So what we got here?
Alan McDonald.
Yeah, would you read this?
So he was Morton Theocal, director of the Space Shuttle Rocket Booster Project, and he said, "I refused to sign the recommendation to proceed with the launch. I told NASA that I don't know who made this recommendation, but you can't accept it because you know, and I know, you're asking us to fly those solid rocket boosters outside of what they're qualified to fly in. That's a violation of protocol. You can't do that. I sure hope nothing happens tomorrow."
Yeah. So there's just one example of several people that have come forth and been involved in different documentaries, and you can take what they say with a grain of salt. And if their words are true, then what this means is that NASA absolutely did have people, engineers or whatnot, that thought that they were really building a rocket that was going to space, and they were warning, hey, there's some failures going on, there's some design flaws, and there's some temperatures. They were this exact guy here, Alan McDonald, director of the Space Shuttle Rocket Booster Project. I remember him also saying that the solid fuel rocket booster that they were using for the very first time in this specific rocket launch, they were using a different kind of fuel, and that it was determined that it was the safest to launch at around 57 degrees. I want to say that they said, whereas on the day that they launched this, it was 18 degrees. on that January morning.
Hmm.
So this guy was, he's now trying to say that he was calling the bluff of NASA and trying to tell them that this wasn't a good idea, that there was something bad that was going to happen. And so following the disaster, though, investigators determined that NASA had deliberately violated launch rules. This is the official story again, right? Engineers warned their superiors that it was too cold for the mission to proceed, and launching in such cold temperatures was against NASA's own procedures. With 500,000 gallons of hydrogen and oxygen rocket fuel on board, it was essentially a bomb launched with the intention of bursting midair, right? Bombs burst in midair. But yeah, go to that next slide and check out, it's said now that it's a myth to believe that they died upon the explosion. Whereas the official story now says that upon investigation that these people survived the initial explosion because the rockets started shooting off in their, like you see behind me, they were going off in circles and doing crazy patterns. But the shuttle itself did break up, but the module that the people were in, you can see pointed at with the arrow here showing that it was kind of like thrown off to the side, and not it itself was not exploded and deteriorated, but that they're saying they would have either lost consciousness in the fall and it was about 46,000 feet. I did look up and they said that's how high they were up. And then most people now believe that they would have died upon hitting the waters, right? When they launch over from Cape Canaveral over the Atlantic Ocean, that when that command module and anybody that was left inside of it hit the water, that would have crushed, from the forces that would have destroyed them.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's that. So this okay. So
that's all right.
Wait a second. Let's go back here.
Okay.
This is what they sent up. So is that the module right here, like that take off the black nose tip and it's just the cockpit glass? And
basically that's what the photograph.
Yeah,
that's the photograph we were just looking at with the something, flying off to the side with the arrow there. They're saying that that's where the people were sitting there up at the top of the rocket.
Okay.
I know, right? That's what they say. Yep. So why did NASA ignore the warnings? Well, real quick here, the forces, if you would, what did it say? Go back one, please.
Was it back? My bad.
You're good. The forces to which the crew were exposed during orbiter breakup were probably not sufficient to cause death or serious injury, says the Presidential Commission on Shuttle Challenger Disaster. That was the Rogers Commission, commissioned by President Ronald Reagan to investigate and restructure NASA after this incident. Allegedly, right?
Yeah, interesting.
So why did NASA ignore the warnings and press ahead? According to the record, there were many factors that influenced the launch decision, but the presidential panel known as the Rogers Commission noted that in an effort to speed launch times to meet NASA's goal of 24 missions a year, the agency had pushed its people and systems beyond their capabilities. But then there wasn't a shuttle launch for 32 months after, right? So, yep, they were aiming and gearing up for like 2 of these a month. And at the pace they were going, they could barely do 2 of them a year with their shuttle launches. And so that's the story. And they're sticking to it, that they were rushing and trying to make things happen at a pace that they weren't, prepared for, and their people and systems weren't. But would you read this one?
So from that same commission we just referenced, they claimed that NASA is unable to determine positively the cause of death of the Challenger astronauts, but has established that it is possible, but not certain, that loss of consciousness did occur in the seconds following the orbiter breakup.
Okay, so the Miami Herald's Tropic magazine also undertook an independent investigation of the accident, which revealed that, contrary to earlier reports, the shuttle cabin had not depressurized in the explosion. This means that the crew was likely alive and awake for the entire 3-mile descent from the sky to the Atlantic Ocean below. This was concluded by data indicating that several of the astronauts had time to activate their personal emergency air packs. The cabin hit the water at a speed greater than 200 miles per hour, crushing the structure and anything left inside, except for a soccer ball. That's not part of tonight's presentation, but so allegedly a soccer ball survived all of this when no one else and nothing else did. And an astronaut supposedly took that soccer ball up on the ISS, years and years later to pay homage to it. But
so this photo we're looking at right here, is this supposed to be just a training photo? Because there's only 4 of them in the picture, and it looks like this is not a closed off capsule.
I don't have the caption that was, associated with this exact photo, but yeah, I would
And
say
if
it's
you
training.
think, oh my goodness, and if you think that helmet is creating some sort of airtight seal on these people's necks and chins, you're out of your mind.
You can see their necks, can't you?
You can they literally got, I mean, again, that's why I asked this is a training photo, because
Yeah,
I want to say they had different outfits on for their actual launch, didn't they?
more than likely, yeah.
But yeah, this is crazy. Anyway, so yeah, it's just like why a soccer ball versus, the whole, like, their actual bodies, like those were recovered, right? And they were given funerals.
Well, so yeah, they're buried in Arlington,
Yeah.
Arlington Cemetery, and I think they said that most of them were cremated. Like there was only 3 of them that were preserved and able to be buried and returned to their families, and the rest of them were all cremated and put in one spot. So there goes the evidence.
Interesting.
As I said earlier, there's been lots of documentaries, right? Just as recently as 2020, there was the Challenger, the final flight on Netflix. That's a good one that's on Netflix you could watch. And then there's in 2019, they had one called the Challenger Disaster, the Untold True Story, featuring Dean Cain. You know Dean Cain, right? I think he played Superman after you did, right?
Oh, is that right? Yeah, he was a Superman actor, like in the 90s show called Lois and Clark. And yeah.
He was in that one. They had a 2013 sci-fi Discovery TV film called The Challenger Disaster as well. But, the Challenger Disaster was acknowledged in the scripts of then popular TV shows like Punky Brewster and Star Trek, The Voyage Home, or the Next Generation. I'm not sure which. I actually even learned when studying for this that NASA had a hand in helping to produce multiple episodes of Star Trek. Did you know that? Because they were around the same time as NASA was really, gearing into doing their missions.
Wow.
They used Star Trek as part of the propaganda to get the attention on space and space travel and things like that. So
yeah, I think that all these movies, all these TV shows, it's definitely constantly a part of it. I mean, it's because the bigger narrative is get them thinking space is somewhere we can travel to, so that it's also sets up the idea that someone can travel from space to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Alien invasion, or the alien deception. We got an episode on that too. First season. Well, so the Teacher in Space program was a NASA program announced by Ronald Reagan in 1984, designed to inspire students, honor teachers, and spur interest in mathematics, science, and space exploration, right? AKA disseminate propaganda to engage the people and get them more interested in space exploration specifically. But how about that logo there, right? You got this rocket flying up through what appears to be a dome shape. That's with a torch.
Yeah. Into the stars.
Mm-hmm. So if Ronald Reagan gets on TV and announces something, you immediately, in 1984, you got the whole United States hanging on his words and wanting to be engaged with whatever he's announcing and talking about, especially when it involves one of their hometown teachers. Wow. And that's what they were doing. They had a list of 11,000 people that they were sifting through and trying to pick for this Teacher in Space program. And they finally picked one. And what's interesting is this lady was married to somebody specifically that might reveal a little bit of nepotism in the government's operations here, right? She was all over the news, though. She had so many different segments. This lady was in the media left and right. They made her into a hometown hero because she was selected. Let me see if I can find here. The Council of Chief State School Officers, a nonprofit organization of public officials in education, was chosen by NASA to coordinate the selection process. Out of the initial applicant pool of 11,000 teachers, 114 semifinalists were nominated. McAuliffe, Krista McAuliffe here, was one of the 2 teachers nominated by the state of New Hampshire on July 1st, 1985. She was announced as one of the 10 finalists, and on July 7th, she traveled to Johnson Space Center for a week of thorough medical examinations and briefings about spaceflight, aka how she was going to be involved in this deception. But the finalists were interviewed by an evaluation committee composed of senior NASA officials, and the committee made recommendations to NASA for the primary and backup candidates for the Teacher in Space project. And on July 19th, 1985, Vice President George H.W. Bush announced that she had been selected for the position. So they were all over the presidential and vice presidential announcements with this. like I said, on the news. She was getting interviewed. She was in the papers. I'm sure they were talking about her on the radio. They were just getting everybody involved, even the school districts. Like I was saying earlier, they had satellites ready to go be attached to some crazy amount of thousands of schools so that they could then watch this, because she was going to go up into space. And on the 4th day they were up there, she was going to do a couple lessons, right? As a teacher, she was going to teach some science lessons while she was up in space. And so they were prepared to have PBS air this. They had a contract with PBS to supposedly get her to be filmed and broadcasted.
Bro, you know what okay. To assume that this was true should make everyone slightly agitated that they're not releasing this type of live stream technology to the public that they've apparently had since 1969.
Yeah, for real. And landline calls to the moon.
I mean, what is going
like
on? This is some amazing tech.
Here it was. Astronaut Krista McAuliffe was married to Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the District of New Hampshire, Stephen McAuliffe, former captain of the U.S. Army, JAG Corp. So you mean to tell me out of 11,000 people, they went with the chick that was married to a former captain of the U.S. Army and the United States District Court judge? Nepotism, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
It's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, has anyone? I wonder if anyone's ever tried to interview her relatives. Well, we can get into that later.
That's all right. Yeah, there's a couple relatives of her we'll look at specifically, but a little bit more to go before we get there. We'll come back to her. But on the same vein of what the teacher in space program, right? The interest was phenomenal, said John D. Cecil, director of elementary and secondary programming for the Public Broadcasting Service, PBS, right? The social studies teachers' in-flight lessons were scheduled to be aired on PBS on day 4 of the mission, as I said. According to Mr. Cecil, nearly all public television stations in the country were planning to carry them. So they were really advertising this and wanting to make sure as many people as they could see it. So
it's a lot of orchestration.
There was indeed. If you would read this one.
So a part of this, it says some 2.5 million students nationwide were viewing the Challenger's takeoff via satellite dishes hooked up to their schools. Others are watching the live broadcast on cable. How would they know the difference? Whatever. And by afternoon, countless millions more skilled children were sitting in classrooms listening to radios or watching continuous replays of the event on public and commercial stations. By the way, you know the size of those satellites in the 1980s?
Yeah.
Those were massive. These are not the dish TV satellites that hang off your balcony that are like the size of your chest.
It looked like a SETI, from that movie.
These were massive. Yeah, my dad used to have one from some land he inherited, and there was one up there. Excuse me. Massive.
Yeah. Yep. They would take up a whole spot in the yard. I remember the big ones like that. Yes, sir. So we got 2.5. I think there was some polls taken that approximately 17% of Americans witnessed the launch live because of the presence of payload specialist Krista McAuliffe, the teacher there, who would have been the first teacher in space, by the way. Media coverage of the accident was extensive. One study reported that 85% of Americans surveyed had heard the news within an hour of the accident. Big news, right? Yep. This was going to be a first in many areas as well. They were really reaching as many demographics as they could with the selection of the astronaut cast that they casted. It was going to be the first Asian American / Hawaiian astronaut, both Asian American and Hawaiian. First private citizen space flight with the first teacher in space selected. It would have been the first Jewish American astronaut, the first Jewish female astronaut. It would be the second female astronaut in all the history of the space, the shuttle missions. And this was going to be the second African-American astronaut in space as well. So it was also the first manned shuttle with solid rocket booster propellant. So they were going for a first in many areas as they could. And like I say, hitting those demographics with, you got Asian, you got the African-American, you got the women, you got the Jewish, everybody represented. So
very diverse. Partially bald. Yep.
That's right. What was next here?
Yes, of course, Sesame Street got in on this.
They tried to. So apparently Krista McAuliffe wasn't meant to be the only passenger on the Challenger who would capture the attention of children. NASA also made efforts to get Sesame Street star Big Bird on the shuttle. They even contacted Carol Spinney, the beloved actor who played the giant yellow Muppet, about participating in the mission. The plan was never approved by Mission Control, but in 2015, NASA did confirm that the conversation with Spinney and the producers of Sesame Street took place. Could you imagine? What more would it have done to the children that were all watching in schools if they would have blown up Big Bird, their beloved character from Sesame Street?
Yeah,
I'd have been heartbroken.
Yeah.
What's next? So yeah, speaking of what they were doing for the children, because many of you might have seen in the teaser trailer for this episode, there was in the very first couple seconds of the clip in the teaser, this little animation pops up, and it's a animation that was specifically used in video advertising for the Challenger Learning Center. They got, I want to say, around 100 or more different centers across the nation where children can go and be educated, so-called, about the Challenger disaster, space travel as a whole, and all the shenanigans that NASA's up to. And they do a lot of hands-on stuff where the children really are made to feel like it's real. And we just know it's not. But interesting thing here is you got the first frame. There's a Saturn, right? A ringed planet with a phoenix. Isn't that what that is?
It is.
The phoenix pops off of the logo, spreads his wings, flies up, and he turns into the Challenger rocket, also in this logo, breaking through a dome, flying through a dome shape with a flat plane on bottom on that dome.
So what thoughts would you have for this sequence of animation?
My first thought is the legend of the phoenix, and the mythology a lot of people might not know, but the phoenix is said to represent a death and resurrection. Yeah. And it's often associated with the occult, so not the death and resurrection of our Christ and Savior, Yeshua of Nazareth.
It's specifically the death and resurrection of Osiris, whom was the Egyptian. That's actually the Greek transliteration name for the Egyptian pantheon. But if you carried over his hierarchy within the Greek pantheon, he would be Apollo.
There it is. Oh, didn't NASA name it a mission after that too?
I think they did. That's crazy. Yeah. And also Saturn would be the patron god who would be considered Zeus over Apollo.
AKA Ra.
Or to the Egyptians. Yeah. So it's fitting that you would have the planet Saturn with the Phoenix right there.
How about
that? And then the whole idea of ascension through the firmament, because that was the point of what ancient Apollo, whom the Hebrews called Nimrod, that was what he did. So it's funny, at the beginning of this, we talked about how, it's interesting to see that this was a propaganda piece, and if we could figure out, my thought was like, a lot of people don't realize the origins of NASA and how they're literally occultic.
Right.
So this is part and parcel with all the symbolism that goes with occultic concepts.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. Nasha in Hebrew obviously means to deceive or to beguile, like the serpent did Eve. And then in the Sanskrit, didn't you say it means destruction?
Yeah, to destroy and to destruction,
and
which is literally the definition
Apollyon.
of Apollyon in Scripture.
Yeah, the destroyer. Yes, sir. Yep. So
pretty wild.
That's just blatant symbolism right out in front of our faces, right? Just out in the open. They want you to know that this is the kind of symbolism that they want to represent. But what if, now just the what if here, we can't conclusively say on a lot of this. There's a couple of these guys we're going to look at that some pretty incredible evidence that I would say kind of lends to the idea of beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the same person. And so we're going to get, like I said, a little up close and personal, too close for comfort for a couple of these as we zoom in on some faces and look into the personal lives and family and relatives. And I feel like we had to do it, Sean. we gotta take a look and see the evidence available to us to uncover the deceptions and see through the lies so that we can give greater glory to the Father of truth.
That's right. All right, I'll play.
All right, check it out.
In 1986, the shuttle Challenger exploded about 74 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 astronauts inside. Or did it? It turns out that 6 of the 7 are still alive and kicking today. Ellison Onizuka claims to be his brother Claude. The Challenger pilot, Mickey Smith, hasn't even bothered changing his name. He's now Professor Michael J. Smith of University of Wisconsin. Krista McAuliffe was a bit of a sneaky one. She was the Challenger payload specialist, quite famous for being a teacher. It turns out during her astronaut days she was using her middle name, Krista. And now she goes by her first name, Sharon. And she's a Syracuse law professor. The Challenger commander, Francis Richard Scobie, is now Dick Scobie, CEO of Cows in Trees Limited. Judith Resnick, the Challenger mission specialist, again hasn't even bothered changing her name. She's a professor at Yale Law. Ronald McNair, another Challenger mission specialist, claims to be his identical twin brother, Carl McNair. What are the odds?
Say it wasn't you.
All right.
It's not me, obviously.
Wasn't it? She even caught me on camera.
Wasn't it?
Here's a decibel chart to show you some examples of how noisy things can be. As you can see, potential hearing damage or loss begins at around 80 to 90 decibels, and the real pain kicks in at around 125. There is a number of reasons that no one can be close to a rocket launch. Heat, explosion risk, gases, flying debris, to name a few. But what most people don't realize is that the exclusion zone around a launch is also because the sound of these things taking off is literally deadly, if you are too close. When the massive Saturn V rocket launched, it gave out 220 decibels, which is loud enough to set grass on fire and melt concrete. It would also turn your internal organs into jelly and melt your bones. What a way to go. The exclusion zone is usually around 3 to 4 miles. If you've ever witnessed a launch at this distance, then you will know that even at 4 miles, it's bloody loud. Now let's see how close the astronauts are to the noise. 363 feet. What? Wait, that can't be right. Yep, it's right. These astronauts are sitting in an aluminium box less than 363 feet away from a noise that should kill them instantly. Let's take a look at how these brave men and women handled this life-threatening situation. They don't seem too bothered. Looks like one guy's reading the instruction manual. Where's their ear protection? How can they talk to mission control over all that noise? Simple answer, they're not sitting on top of that rocket. They're in a studio. But I saw them enter the capsule. I saw the technicians seal the hatch. Yes, you did. Let's see where they went.
The last thing anybody wants now is an emergency. But like everything else, they're ready for that too.
Once the crew are on board, if it looks as if they're in danger, they get out and head down this tube, specially insulated against fire, and zigzagging down not to some point out and away from the rocket, but to an escape room exactly where you'd think it shouldn't be.
Three and a half minutes after they get the warning in the capsule, the crew could be down here in the blast escape room via that 200-foot escape tube, 40 feet below the base of the rocket. They find themselves in a totally rubber room, walls and floors, and they head for safety through a 6-inch steel door. Once they're behind that door, it doesn't matter what comes down this tube behind them. On this side of that door, the rarely seen blast escape room itself. It's totally isolated from everything around it by a series of 24 giant springs underneath the floor and shells all round it of steel, concrete, and sand. It contains enough food, water, and air for 20 people for up to 24 hours, and it's all around the edge. There are these foam rubber shock-absorbing seats, as you can see. The room is built to withstand the simultaneous explosion of every drop of fuel on a Saturn V. And in that event, strapped into your shock-absorbing seat, if your rocket did blow itself to bits 40 feet above your head, all you'd feel would be a mild rumble from somewhere up there.
There you have it, folks. They don't go into space because they can't. Nobody rides in these things because they would die within seconds. Nobody died in these disasters. The only people that died in a space capsule was Gus Grissom and his crew. Gus had figured out the hoax and famously hung a lemon on the outside of the capsule. They tried to get rid of him by blowing the explosive bolts on the hatch while it was floating in the sea after touchdown. Luckily for Gus, he managed to escape before it sunk, but they finally got him by pumping pure oxygen into a training capsule and igniting it. Him and 2 others were burned alive. That shows you the lengths that they will go to protect their multi-billion-dollar scam.
Just one of the many links that they will go to protect their scams. Yep. So that would answer the question for us. That video clip helps us to understand the potential possibility of how people could, the astronauts could appear to be aborting a rocket and getting all strapped in and stuff for the cameras. And then as soon as the cameras are off and right before it's time to launch, they go down a little funhouse slide down into a rubber room, like a padded cell, like for crazies. So, yep.
Yeah, it's an elaborate stage show. And for the exact reason the guy at the very end mentioned, literally billions of dollars every year tied up in this investment for perpetrating this idea. And yeah, I mean, people will kill each other for like $10,000.
Yeah.
You don't think that billions of dollars would cause them to create some stage shows? Some, you know what I'm saying? Like I've seen stage shows where people have created stuff using pyrotechnics that probably cost $20,000-$30,000, but they were just depending on ticket sales.
Yeah.
And they were willing to go through the motions and all the preparations and all the design, all the testing, all the insurances and all the bonding and everything that it requires for that little amount of money. So imagine when you're being handed $20 billion a year.
Exactly. Yep. 19 billion, $50 million on the daily. That's the banknote, right?
Yeah.
Just for some computer animation from a space probe. Yes, sir. So yeah. And if any number of these people that were contracted to play the characters of these astronauts, all they would have to do is be promised that their families would be taken care of and that they would be put in esteemed positions at some Ivy League schools, as brother Eric Rice mentioned earlier, that you get promised that your family will be taken care of, and or coerced with threat and the threat of death, even if they didn't play along. But hey, if you do play along, here's what we're going to do for you. Then these people might not have a choice but to bow down and take part in it at this point.
Yeah, and that's why they depend so heavily on people suspending their disbelief, right? If they can brainwash them into not questioning it, then no one will ever think about the obvious thing that they all witness in life, is that bribes happen. Like it's a massive, massive part of all of life that causes corruption and problems within society and within, different things. So and it's age. It's not like bribes are a new thing that never been tested. There's no precedent for important people in important places to be bribed on mass decisions that affect large populaces. Like this is an age-old concept. The scriptures talk about it emphatically when referring to the Messiah. They say he will not accept a bribe.
All the way back to the 7th from Adam, Enoch prophesied of this kind of thing that.
So if you suspend your disbelief for 2 seconds and say, if that you would ask why the deception, why the lie? Well, if $20 billion is enough reasons, and then you're going to be able to bribe people to keep their mouth closed because they realize they can't have another event that they had with the 3 guys that supposedly went to the moon and then did that horrible press conference afterwards, right? They can't have another one like that, right?
Like a year later.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
They got to have that.
Soon.
I think it was pretty funny. There's a gentleman in the audience who said that he wants to try that slide now.
Down into the rubber room of deception where they sit on their throne of lies. But yeah, let's get into so we got, are they alive? That's the question that we want to pose. And how would they have escaped? Hopefully we answered that with some clear imagery of somebody at a NASA establishment talking about during the Saturn rocket launches. But we already mentioned Miss Krista McAuliffe here. So that's the young lady that allegedly died, the teacher, right? She had a full-scale media propaganda campaign for her mission. And like I said, she was going to be aired on PBS and all these kind of things. But if you go to the next slide, But as I said also earlier, she was married to Stephen J. McAuliffe, judge of the United States District Court for the District of New Hampshire and former captain of the U.S. Army JAG Corps. But perhaps this lady on the next slide, if you would is her name Sharon A. McAuliffe? Well, if you were to go look up like the biography or just the Wikipedia page even of Krista McAuliffe, the astronaut, you'll see that she was going by her middle name, and they actually have listed the Krista McAuliffe astronaut as Sharon Krista McAuliffe was her name.
Interesting.
So yeah, so we have an attorney here at Syracuse University College of Law. And is it just a coincidental namesake of the NASA space teacher Sharon Krista McAuliffe? To be sure, let's check out the next slide. Here's some facial comparison. I gotta be honest, this is one of the ones that I couldn't say for certain. I wasn't as compelled and convicted by the facial comparisons for this particular individual, but
Okay.
there are some interesting ties and connections that her and her family have.
Okay.
And so there's just a little bit. It's possible, right? What do you guys think? Let us know in the chat. Do you guys think that Miss Krista McAuliffe might be this lady on the right, Sharon McAuliffe? Because it was Sharon Krista McAuliffe, and now we got Sharon A. McAuliffe is who this lady is now going by. And yeah, it's a little bit of some similarities. She's even, a lot of these people have Facebook pages. They have LinkedIn pages. They're not hiding really. So what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, she definitely would have had she got braces, it looks like, got her teeth straightened out. The teeth don't seem to be the same, or just different teeth altogether.
Yeah, which often happens for people.
Yeah.
The more sugars that the country,
right.
makes people consume, the quicker we need new teeth. I know that all
And
too well.
I don't know. It's interesting. She also's got I mean, obviously the face on the right, there's a lot more crow's feet involved, but but it does seem to be a very interesting similarity with the eyebrow structure. But
Could be.
It's interesting.
It is.
You have to put on some more weight in order for those dimples to intensify. And that's what people naturally do when they get older, 30 years later.
A little bit of sagging going on, a little bit of droopage in different places.
And your face actually widens, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that, but when you get older. So
sure does. But just to be sure, it turns out that the Washington Post reports that Sharon McAuliffe, the Syracuse, you see Syracuse here at the top right of the slide, Syracuse, New York. Sharon McAuliffe is a cousin of Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. So it may also be entirely coincidental that Syracuse Sharon is a cousin of Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia from 2014 to 2018, who was co-chairman of President Bill Clinton's 1996 re-election campaign and was chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. So we know the trail of bodies and the trail of disinformation and all kinds of wacky stuff that goes on with the Clinton family, right? But this guy was involved with them, and he just so happens to be cousins with the Sharon McAuliffe that was pictured on the right in modern times.
Is the next slide going to be a meme of the Challenger saying I have information that could put Hillary Clinton in jail?
The Challenger didn't explode itself, right?
That's right. It's a spray painted on the side of the Challengers. I have information on Hillary Clinton as it launches. That'd be
yeah, maybe that was it. But one more slide over, if you would. I think this might drive the nail in the coffin for the connection and the strange similarities or coincidences, I should say, of the networking that these people have of their relatives. Because the Sharon A. McAuliffe, lawyer at Syracuse, New York, cousin of Governor here, McAuliffe, Terry McAuliffe, he is reported to, he wants risks shared for future rocket launches at Wallops Island. In the news there, and what is that? The Richmond Times reported that. And then another governor posted on Twitter that Governor McAuliffe meets with NASA Administrator Bolden on building stronger partnerships between NASA and Virginia. So he was an advocate and supporter of NASA. He opened up he was there for an opening ceremony at the Langley Research Center, and pictured at the top left there with the NASA podium in front of him. So some interesting connections that he would be involved with NASA if he's the cousin of this Sharon McAuliffe, who we're saying could potentially be the Krista McAuliffe sharing
Interesting.
Krista McAuliffe. So
And of course, a lot of these guys in politics are connected, but I just think it's interesting that this particular tweet you pulled up from Governor Ralph Northam. A lot of people don't realize that's the Virginia governor, and that he was literally on a radio broadcast one time, giving an interview about the abortion debate in Virginia, and actually tried to justify, hear me out, post-birth abortion.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, not partial birth, not up to 9 months, but like baby's alive, baby's viable, baby's sitting on the table next to the mother. What are we going to do with it? And he was talking about post-birth abortion. Yeah. So the reason I say that is because these are occultic ways, these are occultic mentalities, these are occultic thinkers, and there is a well-known issue with a lot of these politicians being a part of an occultic recruitment organization called Masonic Lodge.
How about that? Yep. Yeah. Even all the way back to George Washington. On a statue of his, he's listed as a Freemason before he's listed as the first president of the United States. So, yeah, politics and leaders in general, world leaders, not just delegated to the American, country. But leaders across the world are involved with Freemasonry. And so that's an episode we might have to get to in the future. So that was Krista McAuliffe, a couple of pieces of information some people might not be familiar with, and some connections and ties to NASA. But Judith Resnick, also Judith Arlene Resnick, was the mission specialist and the second female astronaut, first Jewish American astronaut, first Jewish female astronaut as well, that was going to go to space. And so there's some pictures of her, sweet, young, and innocent, or was she? But interesting thing. What do you see highlighted here about the name on Ancestry.com? The name Resnick. What do they say that name means?
It's they define it as an occupational name for a Jewish ritual slaughterer.
I wonder if that's just pure coincidence, or if that was a stage name, or was it chosen for this particular character? It's
It's interesting, right? That's very quinkadink.
Yep, could be. Fun facts, tidbits there. So on the left, you have young Judith Resnick, the astronaut. But on the right, we have a professor of law at Yale Law School, Miss Judith Resnick, bearing a striking resemblance, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I just even the dimple below her nose, like it's, I could. Now the photo one you got on the left, it looks like she's overly tanned.
Yeah.
That's a horrible light. The lighting of that photo is rough, but
could be.
Ultimately, I wish I could see her ears, but her hair's covering her ears.
I know it. There's a couple more pictures maybe, but we'll even look at some voice analysis.
That eyebrow structure is the same.
That's what I was going to point out. If you'd go back one time, just that the eyebrows, how they kind of wrap around. They're kind of long and wide, and they wrap around to the corners of her eyes there at the ends. Those look 100% the same eyebrow set and structure to me as well. Got
just in case her exact name is a coincidence, right?
Yeah. What are the odds? And so it's not just just for one of these people having the same name, similar features. We're going to see multiples of them, to where the odds are crazy that these people would share the same name and all be living in the same country, and so on and so forth. Yeah, she's even got a little bit of a cherubic kind of upturned nose, right? Like a childish young person's nose.
And all these people are the correct age they would be if they were still alive.
That's the other thing too. Yeah, about 30 years, give or take, right? Between the Challenger disaster and the explosion to when these pictures were taken, for the most part, of the people in modern times, that they don't claim to be the astronaut.
Yeah.
But they got the same names and the same features.
Now this lady, these two pictures shows that this person has the same canine teeth.
Okay, there's one good one. Yep, the same. How about the lines on from her bone structure on her cheeks down to her line for her chin or jaw? You got these lines on the side of her face that match in placement.
That's true.
Some investigative journalism here. We'll let you guys be the make your own decisions, come to your own conclusions on it. But what was the next one? Do they even have similar mannerisms when they talk, holding their hands out with their fingers spread? How about that?
Jazz fingers.
Sometimes when she gets nervous, she just sticks her hands under here like that. Just, superstar. You don't remember Molly Shannon, Superstar?
I do. Yeah. Thank you for anyone in the moderators in the chat for deleting the spam. Appreciate that.
If y'all could, please. Yeah, we don't need any of that going on. No adult dating sites necessary. Thank you anyways. We appreciate you guys. So yeah, thank you for your help, moderators. There you go. So a couple comparisons there. Funny enough, on the right side of this, you see that Yale was advertising and promoting this Judith Resnick, professor of law at Yale Law School. She made a cameo in a movie, in a Doug Liman film called Fair Game. And a couple articles there that you guys could search yourself from the yale.edu website, where they're talking about her making a cameo in this movie, and a quote even from her where she says, "This film provides powerful lessons on the misuses of government power, the critical roles played by honest individuals, and the need for institutional changes in our democracy." How about that? Let's look also at the plot and the description for this movie. I think it's super ironic. Would you read it?
So, Fair Game in 2010, it was about a wife and a mother, Valerie Plame, played by Naomi Watts, has a double life as a CIA operative, hiding her vocation from family and friends. Her husband, Joseph Wilson, which is played by Sean Penn, writes a controversial article in the New York Times refuting stories about the sale of enriched uranium to Iraq. Then, Valerie's secret work and identity is leaked to the press. With her cover blown and other people endangered, Valerie's career and personal life began to unravel.
How about that? It's oddly specific, especially considering what Miss Judith Resnick may have been involved in, right? Because this person that had the cameo in this movie was not the alleged astronaut Judith Resnick, but the modern time Yale professor, who we're saying could very well be one and the same person. So for her to cameo in a movie,
inspired by true events movie too.
That's right. That's what it says. Right around the time as the Manchurian Candidate and Jason Bourne, which were also discussing like CIA sleeper agents and operatives that had their cover blown or something similar, right? So
interesting.
Yeah. So on that note, we're transitioning from Judith Resnick onto Ellison Onizuka, and we're going to look at some voice analysis, if we could, for both of these individuals in one little video clip here. If you got that queued up, I'd like to show
this is the astronaut, Judith Resnick, back in 86. And this is Judith Resnick, the Yale professor, about 10 years, maybe 15 years ago. And now let's look at some voice comparisons. One clip of the astronaut at the start, followed by a clip of the professor. And I have to say, they do sound incredibly similar. Come to your own conclusions here.
Well, I too am glad to be here one more time, and I am hoping that the affliction that Steve Hawley had from the 41D mission specialist of the delays hasn't rubbed off on me. And
there were fewer than 40 federal judges around the United States, and they didn't need a building of their own. They were tucked into facilities like this. And of course, what the U.S. government did was this was a form of tax, and Marine Hospitals health care.
And I think the guys behind me are hoping that it hasn't also. Otherwise, they might throw me.
Of course, is the Civil War, and with the Civil War and the North conquest of the South.
Otherwise, they might throw me off the flight.
The U.S. federal government owned about,
and I will now introduce
about 50 buildings
around
the entire
hoping that it has
United
they might
States.
Throw me
And
off
none
the
of
flight.
Is that you, Judith?
Let me say that it's really a pleasure to be back. Looking forward to going to fly this one. I think we got some real interesting payloads. The mission is a great mission. We're looking forward to it, and I think we're ready to go fly. Thanks for being out here today.
Well, we initially, this is an offshoot of what's been happening in Los Angeles. We have a Onizuka Memorial Committee there that does a science day at El Camino College every year in April. So we thought, well, if they're doing it there, then we should try it here, and that's how it started 13 years ago. So
it's really a pleasure to be back. Looking forward to going to fly this one. I think we got some real interesting payloads.
Bring an astronaut out with NASA and to help educate the public, the students, open the doors for them that opportunities are out there. And a science day, we have breakout sessions where the students can go and do different classes and learn science projects and things. And it's just
mission. We're looking forward to it, and I think we're ready to go fly. Thanks for being out here today.
A fun day, educational fun day for the students. and we've had a good turnout every year, and we expect to do this again as long as we can.
Mission, we're looking forward to it, and I think we're ready to go fly. Thanks for being out here today.
Well, you know, Ellison grew up in Kona, so-called out of the coffee fields of Kona, and you know, he studied hard. He was active in the community, and he always was very inquisitive of anything that he came across, toys, machinery. He'd try to take it apart and put it back together, but he was always interested in aircrafts, and that's how he ended up in the Air Force. He got a full scholarship from the Air Force to the University of Colorado, and he went into aerospace engineering, and eventually upon graduation ended up in the Air Force and at test pilot school at Edwards Air Force Base, and applied with the astronaut program. And he was selected out of some 8,500 candidates. They picked a final 35 astronauts, and he was one of the final 35. He's very pleased. His thing about once becoming an astronaut, he always came back to Hawaii, and rather than go golfing or diving, he wanted to go visit school children and you know, share his experiences and knowledge, and just to help inspire the younger children.
Just to inspire the younger children. They got to target those children, right? Whether they're doing some sort of crazy trafficking, whether they're wanting to murder them in the womb or out, or whether they're just wanting to fill their brains with nonsense and godless lies. But tell us in the chat, guys, what did y'all think about the Judith Resnick's comparisons, right? The Jewish ritual slaughterer and the voice comparison, the analysis there. Did she have some of the same similar voice inflections and tone of voice when she was public speaking? I thought so. What about you, Sean?
I did too. The way she said her R's, she sounded like she's from the Northeast. Right?
Good catch. Yeah.
I thought it was very similar, and everyone's voice changes a little bit. Sometimes when you get older, it gets a little deeper and a little raspier.
Yeah.
So factoring that in as well, I still think it was extremely close, even with giving a small allowance for age, the vocal cords aging.
Yep. By about 30, 35 years there. A couple of other fun facts about Judith Resnick, professor of law at Yale Law School. In 2010, she was named a recipient of the Elizabeth Hurlock Beckman Prize, awarded to outstanding faculty in higher education in the fields of psychology or law. That year, Professor Resnick also had the cameo in the film Fair Game. And in 2013, Professor Resnick was given the Arabella Babb Mansfield Award, the highest honor presented by the National Association of Women Lawyers. So very esteemed, very honored and awarded, and given lots of opportunities to excel in her field and be recognized, not hiding, but just out in plain sight. And
because that would make it more implausible, right? Like, not that this person's secreted away and got a bunch of plastic surgery and is in a witness protection or nothing like that, but just tell them it's their twin. Don't even ask them. Tell them they're a conspiracy theorist if they ask. And in fact, we're going to reward her and honor her and put her to the forefront of things in her career. And they would never, like, it just reminds me of everything that we've seen when politicians absolutely are lying and they get called to the carpet on it. What do? They double down every single time. Yep. They don't just be like, oh, you got me. Okay. Thanks. Good on you. You know what I mean? No, they just double down, triple down. You know what I mean? This is par for the course with that.
Yeah, I'm not a coincidence theorist anymore. I used to be. That's right, Tyler Porter. So yeah, on the next one, the guy that we saw, I didn't really get a chance to introduce him better, but so Ellison Onizuka was the Asian American Hawaiian astronaut that we saw that was on board here and or allegedly on board, and now he is we would say Claude Onizuka. And Claude is, some sources will say that they're twins. Others say that he's the younger brother by 2 years. I didn't find a place where he mentioned that and like the difference. But furthermore, I didn't find in all of the images, there's lots of biographies, lots of stories written about these people. Claude Onizuka himself works closely with NASA, even though he's a board member for the Department of Liquor Control in Hilo, Hawaii. He claims to be the brother of Ellison Onizuka. And so he does speaking engagements on NASA's behalf. And as you saw in that video, he says a lot about the life of his so-called brother. But we're going to see a couple things here. If we could go to the next one.
You know, I take the same approach that I do with Obama. I just want to see that birth certificate.
Yeah. All right. How about let's just look at the crow's feet and the placement and the exact same wrinkles coming off the side of the eye that are oddly similar. We're going to look at those eyebrows and some clearer pictures here on the next slide that I think is one of the...
got the exact same ears. Do you know if twins have the exact same ears?
If they're identical, they can. But yeah, I don't think it's even claimed that these guys are twins. Are you able to zoom in on this one by chance? Make it bigger at all?
Just
That's
like
better.
that. But...
Sure. So what I've circled here, you can see it clearer, and it's more, it's more higher quality here that you're able to see better. That the guy on the left, Ellison Onizuka, the alleged astronaut, has a scar running through his left eyebrow there. Just a tiny little line that you can clearly see where hair doesn't grow. And so if we look over at the Claude Onizuka on the right in modern day, he has the exact same scar in the same exact place on the eyebrow.
Don't you know that when you get hurt, your twin develops the same scar?
I don't know. I don't think it's claimed that they're twins, but it's that would explain it. There it is.
All right.
Yes, sir. So yep, that scar right there says it to me that you're good. Yeah, that scar says it to me that we're looking at the same guy.
Yeah, I mean, besides the same eyes, nose, lips, yeah. And it's not. I mean, yeah, I guess that's convenient to say it's a twin. Like, again, like, okay, sweet. Then just where's your family that's coming out, dropping on social media at a will? Like, yeah, he's a twin. Here's their birth certificates. Got 2 birth certificates for 2 different names, 2 different kids born on the same date in Hawaii. It'd be so easy to disprove this stuff.
It would be, yep. But we've got guys out there in the field doing this investigative journalism independently to try to dig into this. And people have searched Ancestry.com records, public records. They could not find, especially before 1986, there were no records of a Claude Onizuka. But furthermore, you can't find any pictures of them together, even though he's on tour during these speaking engagements. There's never once an image or a photograph, not even a manipulated, attempted fraud of a photograph of them supposedly together. And you would think that would be something that he'd be, kind of proud to display. But not one photograph of the two has ever been released together. And when independent researchers first investigated Claude Onizuka, no birth records could be found for him. So that's some interesting stuff. Same eyebrows, same eyes, same crow's feet, same nose, same hair parting. Their hair parted in the same place on the side of their head. And as we just heard in the video, they share some obvious similarities in their speech patterns.
Yeah, they do. I think you're right. Not just that, but also just the whole tone of voice, the whole thing. I mean, it looks literally just like the same guy. He even actually did pretty well aging. Same for this guy that we got on screen. Like, Ronald. Black dudes don't age as severely. They age better, basically, the way they're
Black don't crack, they say, right?
Okay. I've never heard that, but I like it. Yeah. So they definitely age more graceful than other people. And this dude literally looks like exactly the same guy.
Darker the berry, sweeter the juice, they say.
I don't know anything about that. Back to you.
Nonetheless, we got Mr. Ronald McNair here. He was a second African-American astronaut scheduled to go to space. And he was born to Carl and Pearl McNair, October 21st, 1950 in Lake City, South Carolina. Lots of stories about this guy. They love talking about him in the documentaries and whatnot. But, he allegedly passed away. And if you'd go to the next slide.
Is that him in the middle picture running on the beach with Rocky and Apollo Creed?
I guess that's what that is. This is actually a slide from the Netflix documentary, right? One of them. But nonetheless, here's this guy here in modern times, Carl S. McNair, author, speaker, diversity in the space program presenter, for NASA, STEM education advocate, and claims to be the twin brother. Actually, it's reported that when Carl was asked about his resemblance to the astronaut Ronald McNair, he spontaneously replied that he was his twin brother. I couldn't find any record of that, but this is the recorded hearsay of what has been said about his response when somebody said, "Hey, you sure do look like that guy."
Is that you that overlaid his modern photo onto older ones?
No, that's one I just found, but yeah, I
Okay.
threw that in there just to fill in the
Yeah.
space. Somebody did a 50% transparency of both of the younger face and the older face of Ronald and Carl. Yep, Ronald E. McNair, now Carl S. McNair,
Okay.
born the same year, a couple months apart. It says, according to the birth dates that they have on record. So he says he's the twin, but then the birth dates that are shared on the internet for them aren't the same.
Interesting.
So who knows? But no records of a twin brother or brother, period, to Ronald McNair existed before 1986. And independent investigators have searched records with the available information of the birth date and parents' names, and the result showing no birth records for Carl McNair.
Hmm.
That's what they say.
What a coincidence that out of, what'd you say, 11,000 applicants, they would choose.
Well, that was just for the teacher in space program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who many knows how many other people they interviewed for the other positions, the other 6 positions? But how what are the odds that out of the 7 people picked, so many of them would have a twin?
Yeah. Well, yeah, at least one of them. Yep.
It's pretty wild.
I have a twin brother named Carl too. How about that? No. Nonetheless, you might notice a gap in the teeth of the older gentleman on the right. I would propose that it's entirely possible that you gotta remember that when they're setting up the stage at the time, they're hiring the characters. They might change the characters up a little bit from their original appearance when they first hit the stage. So this man could have very well been wearing a veneer, some sort of teeth covering.
The picture on the left, the astronaut picture, I mean,
they're pretty
they're
white.
pretty white. Yeah, there's 3 front teeth, 4 they're all pretty white compared to the rest.
Yes, sir. Yep, and that's the way in most of his pictures, and they do appear to provide a little bit of an overbite, which would make sense if he was wearing some sort of veneer to cover up this gap.
In fact, I saw a funny TikTok recently about that very same thing. When people get veneers, they don't stop smiling super big. So look at the smile on the right, and then versus the smile on the left. Boy, he's cheesing on the left. Yeah,
That's
he's
right.
happy.
He's feeling cool. He was always wearing shades too. Man, that guy was the character for sure. They wanted to have him identify with that demographic, I'm sure. But
yeah,
there's another where they have their head cocked at the same kind of angle.
Yeah,
to pose for this picture.
Yeah, similar laugh lines. They're not the guy on the right's not smiling as big.
No.
And yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very similar nose,
same eyebrow structures. Yeah,
the high forehead. It's all there. What do you guys think? Once again, let us know in the chat. Tell us if you think that Carl and Ronald are indeed the same, one and the same guy, or let us know if you think we might be wrong. Let us know if you don't see it. We'd love to hear from you.
Interesting.
Who's next up? Oh, okay. So here's Gregory Jarvis. This is the one and only out of the entire 7 that nobody can seem to find any information for.
It's because they turned him into Iron Man's AI.
Jarvis. Yep. Very likely. That's where it was. Yeah. But so he looked to be the oldest of the members there. So maybe he passed away within a couple decades after that. I don't know. I couldn't find anything on him, and I couldn't seem to find anybody else that could find anything on him either. One person suggested maybe this was the one that they actually killed. Maybe he was, against the whole operation and wanted to speak out about it. And but hearsay, we don't have any evidence for it. Nothing exists.
Yeah, it's like that old argument people say, well, dude, how could they keep a secret like this? But whistleblowers would come out. You're like, have you ever heard any type of interview about whistleblowers and what happens to them? And sometimes it's not even state secrets or government concepts. It's just between corporations, and they're on the run for their lives because they're trying to go whistleblow. They have to go undercover and everything. Like people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, those are special high profile cases. All other whistleblowers are extinguished or they're disappeared. They're removed. Like it's not. I remember listening to a guy that was trying to do whistleblowing on Facebook, a whole documentary on him, and how he was running in San Francisco from different houses and had to call the police to get arrested intentionally because people were after him, and like all kinds of things, man. Like it's
even just us not having any affiliation or involvement with any government agency or any of it 40, 50 years ago, the way that
Right.
we're talking to the public right now, sharing and exposing the things that we're talking about 40, 50 years ago, they could have wanted to off us, and they would regularly have done that
Right.
for, you know, lots of people that were speaking out against their narrative and getting any kind of exposure and following.
Yep. Because they usually went to someone in the media first, because they thought, well, that's how I get my story out to the masses, because they didn't have YouTube. But that means you're trusting that story in the hands of others with eyes on it, people in the media you don't know exactly. And it's been commonly known that there's been CIA plants in our media. It's part of Operation Mockingbird. So like, it's just interesting to me how it would have been super dangerous for any of these people to ever decide, you know what, I need to come out and expose this, right? Because they would have like, no, you disappear, but you think, well, maybe they'll hurt my family as well, you know? So
Really?
I don't know if he's dead, but it's interesting that he's not around anymore. And I wonder if these guys just want to go into seclusion in general.
Very possible.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Thank you again for your help in the chat, moderators. Appreciate you taking care of that spam. Jo said earlier about the Ronald and Carl McNair. He said, at NASA, we call this a 20-twin-twin. Shout out, Jo.
That's funny.
Great episode with you last time, by the way, brother Jo. We enjoyed it. So here's a guy that's got some interesting facts about him. And one of the ones that bears the most striking resemblance, I feel like, to his astronaut counterpart, Francis Dick Scobie, aka Richard Scobie, was apparently going by his middle name at the time. And he's got a unique look about him. He's got some people made the comment that one of his eyes might be what they call a dead eye, or maybe even potentially a glass eye. It just kind of hovers off to the side there, and just a noteworthy characteristic feature about him that kind of stands out.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, there is a Richard Scobie who would be about the same age as Francis Dick Scobie, the astronaut, and he's got a LinkedIn page and a Facebook page.
Interesting.
Multiple pictures of him out there. And man, it's all in the eyes with this guy for me, once we see the face comparisons. But take note here that he is the CEO of a company called Cows and Trees, listed both on Facebook and LinkedIn. And Cows and Trees is just a marketing company, Chicago-based. But if you go to the next slide.
I'm looking it up right now. It's an advertising agency on Facebook, and they're in Chicago. They got like 2,200 followers.
Yeah, they didn't blow up very big. And I think, here's what I gather, is that he started this company. He was very much wanting to be the face of this company. And all this information started getting out. And they changed the name of the company very quickly. It's now Noble is the name of the marketing company. And he's no longer the face of it. His name and picture doesn't pop up with the
new company,
with the connections of the new company. But back when this was a company that just started off, he had a website, cowsandtrees.com, no longer available. But there's lots of records of people that, took note of this and did some screenshots back when it was up and running, that cowsandtrees.com. And as soon as you logged in, this animation played, and this cow comes in with a rocket strapped to its back. And this cow does a spiral.
Wow.
Much like what you're seeing here behind me, which is a photograph of the Challenger explosion. Not exactly the same, but still a rocket looking like it's spinning, spiraling out of control.
And cows were used for sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that.
Wow. And of course, it's an actual, isn't that the PEDO spiral, the pedo spiral?
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Good catch. Yep, they do love to use those. The FBI even released, a statement showing what the different PEDO rings use for their symbols. They got the triangle spiral and the circle spiral.
Yep.
One for girls, one for boys, apparently. Sick stuff. But yep, he's got a 6 spiral. And if you just take a second to notice all the similarities that this guy's got going on, look at that corner of his mouth. It's like one side of his face maybe had almost similar to a palsy or something of the case, because it droops a little bit, with the eye looking like a little bit of a dead eye, they said. And the chin structure the same, the smile, the corner of his mouth on the one side kind of raises higher than the other side, the laugh lines around his mouth, the nose is dead on, the eyebrows, and like I said, all in the eyes, the hair part is even one and the same high forehead.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does look like he had some sort of stroke or paralysis. It's kind of like that Moderna smile,
Could be Moderna. Yeah. The Beebs. Could be. So
that is definitely the same dude, and he goes by the same name, right?
he does, yeah. Like I said, Francis Richard Scobie is the name of the astronaut. Now we just got Richard Scobie, CEO of Cows and Trees, on the right.
By the way, the brother, I don't know when he started this company, but this is Microsoft Paint.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, from like Windows Vista or something. Like, this is bad. I can see why he had to rebrand.
More than likely. Here's another comparison with a little bit of that sideways smile going on with the corner of the mouth up on one side.
Yeah.
Still the same nose. It's a good angle of both pictures because it looks to be a similar kind of head tilt. Nose taking a dive off to the left just a little bit. Same brow line.
Yep. Same little dents in his chin. He doesn't have a sugar bowl, but he's got like this little dent on the bottom of his chin where the right side of his would be our left, but the right side of his jawline seems to, like, when he smiles, push extra skin up, creating a little crease in the chin.
Right.
That's there as well.
Yep. And he's got even like the corner of his mouth kind of turns downward just a little bit there at the very end. His eyes both turn downward slope.
Yeah.
On both.
Same ear shapes, the symmetry of the ear shape.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And would notably be the same age and appearance as the Francis Richard Scobie would be today. That's one of the more interesting ones. Yeah, there's one last one.
Yeah, this guy's
Just
the
to
same
drive it
dude.
in.
It's crazy. Like, they don't even, they're just not even hiding it.
Nope.
That's how confident they are with distracting people with new stuff.
Exactly. Advertising themselves even as the face of a company out in plain sight. So here's something interesting. Richard William Scobie is a lieutenant general in the United States Air Force, and he is noted to be the son of astronaut Dick Scobie. Mm-hmm. So I've got the son of the confirmed son, according to NASA and official reports that say he is the confirmed son of the astronaut Richard Scobie. And then I've got modern day Richard Scobie on the right. Do they look like they could be son and father and son?
Yeah, they definitely got the same mouth, and obviously they don't have the same eyes, but I haven't seen the mother. So, but they definitely got the same mouth for sure. I mean, that is very similar.
Even on Richard William Scobie, the lieutenant on the left there, he's even got one side of his mouth that kind of curls up just a little bit too.
Yeah.
It's very similar there. There's one more, son of the astronaut, and the astronaut ? Could these guys be father and son?
This one's much more. Yeah, they got the same eyes. It's so weird. I wonder if it's just the weight issue. Like, here he was just much more overweight, but then here his face is a little thinner, and you definitely see the same eyes.
How about that?
Although one's not drooping, but as far as the shape and the color matched with the same type of smile, I definitely could see his son being his son.
I just hate to have to put these families and these people's children and stuff on blast like this, but man, we gotta drive the point home. Let the people know.
So here's the big question:
insight.
Does these two guys ever meet in real life?
We don't have pictures of them. We don't have I searched their Facebooks pretty thoroughly and the information that is available, and of course there's no pictures with their children. There's no real family history. A lot of information that you might would think important is not available on their Facebooks, like birthdays and things. Certain things that just seem like would be included but aren't, because they have so many other things public, like pictures of them with some other family, but you never see the alleged family in there.
So the guy on the left grows up thinking that his dad was killed in the Challenger disaster. This, in his modern life, if he watches any amount of TV or social media, he may have come across this comparison about how this guy on the right is the same person as the person he thinks was his dad that's dead. So what does this guy on the left think? Does he think, oh, it's just a doppelganger out there that looks like my dad?
Or being a highly medaled, right? Lots of medals on this guy, the lieutenant general on the left here. He's very likely in on it and knew the whole time also. It could be
because he grew up knowing what's going on, and it was just a part of the,
highly decorated was the word I was looking for. There it is. Yep. He's up there in the military.
Oh, this is not even, we shouldn't even compare this one. This is too obvious.
Last but not least, Michael J. Smith, once again, did not even bother changing his name. And he also works as a professor at a law school. How about that?
And he aged really well. Wow.
Well, these are all the same pictures, actually, of the same
Oh,
alleged
okay,
astronaut.
good,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. This is just the intro to the astronaut, and then next we're gonna look at.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in there on that one? This next one, sorry. Here we go. So we got Michael J. Smith, College of Engineering. Actually, is a professor emeritus at University of Wisconsin-Madison. So a fellow named Michael J. Smith, who bears a striking resemblance to NASA Challenger pilot Michael J. Smith, with a 30-year time lapse considered, is found alive and well teaching at University of Wisconsin-Madison. If he were still alive, the Challenger pilot would be 77 years old today. Well, there just so happens to be a 77-year-old named Michael J. Smith living in Madison, Wisconsin, now professor emeritus at University of Wisconsin-Madison. So what are the odds? But we have, of all these people, we have finally, now this is something I really only became aware of in just the past, 6 months to a year, when I first started looking into all this stuff, and some of this other information was available 5-6 years ago. This clip wasn't. This is fairly relatively recent, new, where a guy did some research and found out where Michael J. Smith lives.
Interesting.
Went up to his house, and we're gonna see here in this next clip. But I wouldn't recommend doing this. You don't want to just go stalk people, but this guy did, and he got some interaction. He actually got some engagement about with the modern day Michael J. Smith.
It's interesting. I wonder if the same guy did what I thought of with the previous guy, the father and the son, and ever detailed one of them to see if they ever met up for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has the cojones to do this with this guy.
Those of us who have taken the time to peel back one of truth's protective layers have surely come across this image here. The story goes that 7 of the astronauts who died in the 1986 Challenger explosion are alive and well. And the pilot, Michael J. Smith, is a professor emeritus at UW-Madison. Because I live in the Madison area, looking up Michael Smith had been on my to-do list for a while. Of course, you can't just call up and leave a voice message asking him if he's part of an evil scheme to deceive the sleeping masses. A better way would be to find him in person and ask him. So that's what I did. Is Challenger pilot Michael J. Smith alive and well? Take a look at the footage and let me know what you think. Hey there. Hey, sorry to bother you. I was pulling out and I saw you. I just came by to... Are you Michael Smith?
Yeah.
Professor at university?
Retired.
Retired?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just stopped by because there's this room. Are you aware of that? There's a rumor on the internet.
It's not me.
That people are saying.
Yeah, it's not me, obviously. I mean, anybody that looks at my background, looks where I was born, it's not me. I mean, it's interesting that the Michael J. Smith that was the astronaut looks something like me when we were younger, but really not if you really look at facial recognition.
You never been a pilot, never been in the military?
Nothing like that.
Huh.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I don't respond to the emails I get. I get probably an email, maybe 2 a month.
Really?
And I got one guy that's been really hounding me, and I turned it over to the FBI.
Really?
I mean, it's supposed to, another crazy theory.
Okay.
But that's, not me.
All right.
I'm glad I wasn't him, but he's quite a guy.
Yeah.
But if you look at my career, you look at my CV that's online, all the stuff I've published, all that I've done, it's not even close to what that guy was.
Okay. Yeah, you just sure look a lot. It's the same name.
I know the facial thing, but that's what we looked like, 40 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting you came all out here.
I did. I drove an hour. It's,
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, take care.
Yes.
What's up, FEs? Something that I do for a living. I am a teeth guy. I specialize in teeth. Okay, so let's look at this. I want you to focus on his teeth, and then I want you to look at this guy's teeth. Okay. Now you might say, they look a little different now. Well, what you have with age, you have what's known as gum recession right there, and he has some bone loss. But if you look at his palate, he has what is known as a narrow palate. That way you can see the darkness up in his mouth. You can see that. So he has a narrow palate. If he had and you can look at the bone loss there, and it looked like he has had some work on his front teeth. But look at his eyes, look at the eye color, look at the distance between his eyes. Look at that. Same exact color eyes and the same narrow palate, same exact teeth. But here he was younger, and he had actually healthy gums. But if you look in the back there, you can see that he is starting to get, on this tooth right here, the big one, he is starting to get a little gum recession. And the two behind there, the exact same thing. On this side, you can see that he has a tooth that is not properly aligned back there, that is known as a premolar. And that right there, that tooth is pretty much hiding behind the other tooth. Okay, now let's go and look at here. Once again, that tooth is hiding behind the other teeth. So this guy and this guy, they have the exact same nose ridge. Okay, pay attention. Now look at this on his lip right there. That right there is something that happened in his life. That little circle right there on his lip. That couldn't possibly be on the guy that's not him. Lo and behold, same thing on his lip. On the outside of his lip, I mean. That's the lip area. Pay attention to the nose. The nose is wide near the eyes. Pay attention, then it goes down and then it narrows back in. And once again, look at the nose, look at the eyes. So please don't come at me anymore about this guy and this guy not being the same guy. Come on, knock it off.
There you have it, brothers and sisters. I think this gentleman here has the most striking resemblance, the most similarities. It's probably a tie between him and Richard Scobie, maybe, and Ellison Onizuka, Claude Onizuka. Man, those three specifically, I'm pretty sold on. It'd be hard to. They'd have to really contrive to present some evidence to say otherwise and prove otherwise. But at this point, I'm not sure I'd even believe that, with all the evidence suggesting otherwise, that they are in fact the same people, same scar, multiple occasions. So
I think a lot of people really struggle with accepting that people could lie to them.
Yeah,
it's like a naive trait of all humanity. They really struggle. Like, then you get the jaded people that think everybody's lying to them about everything, you know what I mean? And they get in fights with people at Wendy's trying to get their McFlurry or whatever. But like, then there's just the general average person. They really struggle with thinking that someone could actually lie to me straight to my face multiple times. You know what I mean?
And be so open about it and right out in plain sight like that, instead of hiding and being some sort of reclusive liar.
Yeah.
No, they're proud of it seems.
Pretty amazing.
Didn't even bother to change their names.
Yeah, be careful though, by the way, West Blaze, if you ever email one of these people, they could turn you over to the FBI.
They could. Is that something that just any civilian does? Have you ever known anybody that said, yeah, I called the FBI on this guy one time? That's something that somebody does if they're involved with the government.
We don't know what the guy was saying to him, but yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, clearly this dude is connected. Let's just put it like that.
Maybe so.
I mean, unless the guy was literally trying to come in and is that the FBI's purview? Is that their jurisdiction? Is internet threats?
Man, I don't know.
I don't know either. But
harassment it's weird stuff, brother. But if you would read this little definition of trauma-based mind control,
it's a practice of fear-induced psychological manipulation, ritually inciting traumatic stress in the emotions of its victims for purposes of coerciveness or control. A systematic traumatization that blocks the victim's capacity for conscious processing and then employs suggestion and or conditioning to implant thoughts, directives, and perceptions in the unconscious mind.
Interesting. So we hear of these stories that are consistently being confirmed and validated by documents that are being released and declassified by the US government about MK Ultra, Monarch, mind control programming, and things that they would do that they got from Nazi Germany and other totalitarian dictatorships, and the military practices and exercises they were doing to try to control people's minds, whether for the purpose of working with them or just being fooled by their narratives.
Yeah.
But
And there's another term that this goes by, and it's called SRA.
SRA, satanic ritual. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's of course it's a little more how do I put this? SRA is a little more brutal and direct with their methodology, versus trauma-based mind control can just happen because someone that's too young to process the information watches a spaceship blow up that supposedly had 7 people inside it. Yeah.
Right. And so it's a regular practice of targeting the children. They put a huge target on millions of children, really targeted the younger audience to instill this trauma and the fear and the terror live on TV in their classrooms. Yeah. Man, there were so many reports. I wish I could have been able to cite all of them, and wish we had time for them. But there was a whole website that somebody had wrote an article in 1986 about the events as recorded by teachers and students, and how there was just hysteria. There was kids running out of the classroom crying. There were children that were extremely depressed as a result of this thing. And so it's real, guys. Like they want to instill trauma and fear, and they're still doing that on the news and media today still, right? With at every turn, every chance they can. And it's a form of brainwashing. The concept that the human mind can be altered or controlled by certain psychological techniques said to reduce its subject's ability to think critically or independently, to allow the introduction of new unwanted thoughts and ideas into their minds, as well as to change their attitudes, values, and beliefs. Man, if that's not what NASA stands for. What do you think?
Yeah, and the whole process, the whole thing, we've talked about it in a couple different episodes, just the history of NASA, the programs they run, and then stunts like this that they've pulled throughout the years. I mean, think about also the whole Apollo 13 thing. You know, there was movies made on that, documentaries made on that. Such a stressful tension, the drama of it all. You know what I mean? It was like the first, how do I say this? Like science fiction reality show, you know, to where it's like, oh, there's the stress. Can they get back? How are they going to do it? You know, how are they going to get out of this lab with just the component pieces they have available? So the whole thing does become a show that is intended to get you to believe a certain narrative so that you go along with the values and the beliefs that go with that narrative. Like we talked about earlier, the biggest part of this narrative is to get you to believe the big picture without telling you outright, you should believe the big picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
so like if I were to say to you, WesBlaze, I know that you believe in biblical cosmology, but instead, you know, someone was coming up to you and saying you should believe in a heliocentric model. And instead of telling you that directly, they just try to tell you, hey, look what all these people are doing inside of a heliocentric model.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying?
They
it's
assume it going into it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of the brainwashing that they want you to think along their lines of this, this model that we've said this before. I don't know if you agree with this statement, so I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Go ahead.
But I've said on my channel, and I at this point in my research, I wholeheartedly agree that the idea of heliocentricity, the whole concept, and everything it's pushed and used as part of the agendas of the world, and the occult and the medias, the governments, all of it, it's an occultic ideology that's wrapped in modern science, much of it which cannot be proven to the public or replicated by anybody, in order to push a narrative to get people to stop believing in the Father and his model of creation.
Absolutely right.
So
yep. I was asked today when speaking to some family members about our show tonight and what the topic of it would be, and I was asked, why is this something that I want to tell the world, as if it's not important, or as if it's going to make me or us look bad. And I just can't help but think, like, the truth should be told, and these people who are lying against the truth are setting themselves against the Father, against the Most High and His Anointed, right? As I started off with Psalms, and that they do so to push this narrative of the setting of their story, of the occultic story, and the heliocentric Big Bang evolutionary cosmology that is absolutely opposite and contrary to everything that the Father said he created and set up for us to live inside, like his house. And so if they're against God and they're against his truth, they're contradicting the scriptures at every turn, then yeah, absolutely, we should make it a point to tell the world about it, because we know who we believe, and we'd like you to be on the same page, on the right winning team.
And the Father himself in Romans 1, he even tells us that, everything that was made represents his invisible qualities, unseen nature, so that mankind is without excuse.
Yeah, he inspired Paul to write.
It's one of those ideas that if we don't believe that what we see around us in our creation is indication of the creator who claimed to make it, and that we claim, oh, there's no creator, we're just an accident, just a happy accident that's got a short lifespan and no purpose, then we're ignoring that claim. And then that means you have to redefine everything you see in life around you, which when you get into certain types of scientific fields, there's a lot of contentious debate amongst different biologists, geneticists, even amateur astronomers. Different types of scientists will just say, wait a minute, this evolutionary narrative doesn't hold up in a whole bunch of ways. This whole concept of DNA and everything that's involved in it, and how intricate it is, and how there's irreducible complexity within certain parts of the RNA, and a whole bunch of other concepts, and how the whole concept of redshift and everything that the astronomers and the whole trigonometric parallax and all the things that it's pushed into to assume a certain narrative. There's a lot of contention in those things, but just like we talked about earlier, lots of dissenting opinion gets squashed before it ever gets to the masses, and sometimes it finally gets to YouTube and they just pull it right off.
Yeah.
So this is where, if we don't, I think at this point, WesBlaze in 2022, if everyone everyone in most first world countries understands that there is, without a doubt, suppression of information on social media and what they call legacy media, traditional media.
Mm-hmm.
It came to a head in probably 2017, 2018, and it's still been going on, but it's become widely known. So if it's widely known, does anyone ever ask themselves why it's happening? And that, of course, the part of the narrative, what they say is, oh, it's for your safety. It's because this big bad misinformation, if you're wrong on a topic, that could kill people, right? So it's to control Brahma, as well. That's a word from ancient India. It's to control the narrative, the doctrine, the official doctrine approved by the state. So they have to control the narrative, which is, as we've seen in politics and YouTube suppression, if your narrative does not go with what they want, if you try to talk about the jabby jabs in a way they don't like, they remove your narrative and insert their narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like I promise you, whoever's watching this, the next video playing next is not another WesBlaze and Common Ground video.
No,
it's probably Professor Dave or something.
If this one even gets played for people that weren't already knowing to tune into it. So we appreciate you guys, everybody watching. If y'all wouldn't mind, if you were edified by this, if you learned something, if you felt like you were led to some information that helps you make a better conclusion, please feel free to share this to your social medias, your friends, your family, message it to somebody, like the video, subscribe if you're not already, if you would, please, we'd appreciate it. And we had just a couple more scriptures maybe to share with people, just to drive home that none of the narrative of the scriptures, none of the narrative of really where we actually live takes place in a spinning ball model shooting around the sun that's hurling through the galaxy that's expanding since the point of the Big Bang Theory. And it's all that's the nonsense. Whereas what we have represented here on the screen is a much better, more accurate representation, considering all of the wealth of scriptures. Now, go back to episode 1 if you haven't already seen the rest of the Uncommon Ground series, starting with season 1, where we detail many of these different aspects of the creation model. But just to remind you guys, this is more representative of what the scriptures say and what the Father says he actually created where we live. And just as a reminder, John 3:13, Yeshua of Nazareth, Jesus the Christ, says, "No one has ascended into heaven, but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man." Whereas they'll have you believe that, no, the Challenger mission didn't make it to the heavens. They'd tell you that they went to the moon 6 times, which is placed inside of the firmament of heaven, as Genesis 1 tells us.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't go to the heavens. No man has, including Enoch or Elijah. He didn't make any exceptions, but that's another show. No one has ascended into heaven, Jesus says. Would you read Revelation 21:8?
And Revelation 28, it says, "But for the cowardly and the unbelieving, abominable, murderers, immoral persons, and sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death."
The lake of fire, second death. Well, hold on real quick, Sean. Just for the people that might be wondering, they would say, yeah, we've all lied. I've told a lie. Everybody's lied. Nobody's without sin but Jesus. So does this mean that I'm guaranteed destined to go to the lake of fire just because I've told a lie?
There's a thing in the scripture called repentance, where you actually acknowledge what you've done is wrong and transgress the Father's expectation of behavior for you. And so you stop doing that and you start doing the right behavior. Now, where the borderline is on how much bad behavior you have to do, I mean, that's where we just put our faith in Yeshua to give us salvation.
He is the
we
judge.
repent. Yeah, we let him do that job on judging our life and our deeds, which is what the scripture says will happen. He will judge every word and deed. So if he sees that you came to it, we have a wonderful example, WesBlaze, by the way, in 2 Chronicles 33.
Sure.
Manasseh.
Yeah.
A man that was practicing idolatry, which is the occultic ways of foreign nations outside of Israel, which included horrific practices.
Right.
And he was getting people inside of Israel to practice those as well. So not only was he engaging in murderous, sorcerous, immoral, and abominable things like that verse talks about, he was teaching other people and making it a way for them to do it as well. That guy repented and changed his heart, changed his mind, changed his behavior, even at the end of his life. I don't know how long he lived after he repented, but it did say God accepted his repentance.
Right.
So that's a wonderful example of the mercy that's shown to us through our wonderful advocate and mediator, Yeshua of Nazareth. And so that just because you've told a lie in your life doesn't mean you're destined for the lake of fire. And it's just, there's a thing called repentance. But obviously, if you continue throughout your whole life, and you're just like Ezekiel 18 says, if a righteous man or if an unrighteous man continues in unrighteousness, then he will not receive life. But
Right.
if a unrighteous man turns from his wicked ways and begins and practices righteousness, his former unrighteousness will not be held against him, and he will live. So there's a wonderful place of repentance in the scriptures that the Father tries to announce constantly through all of his prophets and through his Messiah, Yeshua of Nazareth.
That's right. And just for anybody that's not certain or was unaware, repentance literally means to turn from your sin. But what is sin? How does scripture define sin? Sin is the transgression of God's law, his eternal Torah, the instructions for right behavior, for right living that he gives. And those laws are his own character. It's his own ways and his own behavior that Yeshua of Nazareth, the Son and Messiah, kept perfectly. So he didn't do anything that was outside of that behavior. And we are called to walk as he walked, live as he lives. And so, yeah, the main difference would be that, somebody that's a liar in the context of that passage in Revelation is somebody that makes a practice of it without repentance, unrepentant lying until the day they die. That's all they make a practice of it. Whereas if you make a practice of turning from that transgression and make a practice of telling the truth and keeping the Father's instructions, he guarantees that you will live. And
so if I was Buzz and someone came up to me with a mic and a Bible and said, swear to me that you went to the moon, I would slap my hand down there in a heartbeat. If I had truly gone to the moon, if I had truly done it, it wouldn't even have been a thing. I would have slapped my hand down there and said, yes, I did. Thank you would you like an autograph?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have walked on about my day. I wouldn't have shrieked back from the Bible and tried to punch the guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that was Buzz, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, we'll look at that in an upcoming episode. We'll have to check out the moon landing soon too.
So this the whole concept of, if you're, even if they're threatening your life, you know what I'm saying? If you want to repent, repent. It might cost you to repent, but that's the bed you made, unfortunately. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those deals where I pray for the souls of these people. I hope that they do come to a place of repentance. Because to me, it's not even like we're uncovering some crazy wild information. Like, this is all public information. WesBlaze, do you have a special investigator's license?
No.
Are you a qualified, certified private investigator with a specific license to look at personal records or documentations that only the police can hold?
No, this was all free information online where other
Public
people.
free information.
Yeah, I'm not accredited. I didn't go to school for this. I just came to the truth. The
Yeah. So just, it's a wonderful verse that you put up there, because hopefully it can help people understand that this is why I've mentioned a few times throughout the broadcast that we're not just talking about political propagandists who are just trying to embezzle money through taxation. Guys, everything they layer all of their activities, their crafts, their clothing, their patches, their helmets, their billboards, their advertisements, all of it's layered with occultic symbols. And if you're not aware of that, if this is your first time seeing anything like this or hearing anything like this, you're gonna have to do your own research and look up these concepts. But this is how the occult communicates. They communicate through symbols.
Yep.
Right. This is not something like they're not just going to come right out and tell you, oh, hey, by the way, we worship Saturn and Apollo. Right. No, but they'll put it on their patch and on a little animated cartoon or whatever for the kids, because this is how they indoctrinate. Right. Because it's so obvious of a religion that's so horrific. The average person wouldn't accept it. You have to be brought up in it, trained up in the way you should not go. You have to be brought up in it, or you have to be coerced into it. And this is what we see a lot of times, especially in the music industry, where they have the stories and the testimonies of how they were brought to a room and offered a scenario if they wanted to be wealthy, famous, and powerful in the music industry and have their CDs sold. And they had to make a decision at that point. And they realized the things that were being coerced into were very bad and very cultic, not cool, and it was going to control them for the rest of their life. So it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say, Wes, is imagine, we're both believers. I'm just talking like someone's never seen our show before, right? Obviously, we have a vibrant audience that knows who we are, what we believe, and what we teach. Imagine, though, if you saw, you and I believe the scriptures are real. We believe they are the words of the Creator passed down through the prophets. And in those scriptures, it tells you that there is a character who used to be an angel of heaven who has now decided to hang out on the earth and try to mess with mankind, to attempt, destroy, attack, and oppress us, to get us to transgress God's law, to get us to disbelieve that God is real. So this character, ancient Hebrews called him Azazel. We now commonly generically refer to him as a Satan character. If he were to come out in public and Jesus of Nazareth were on the earth and came up and they were both side by side on, Fox News being interviewed.
Okay.
just play.
I'm going with it.
Yeah. And the commentator turned, let's say it's Neil Cavuto. And Neil Cavuto says, okay, well, Satan, you got quite a tainted history here. Just wanted to know exactly what do you believe? What would you like the people to do? And how would you want them to, why do you want followers? Why do you want people to do what you're doing? What do you exactly do? And he's like, well, I do a whole bunch of stuff I can't say on live TV. So, it's some of the stuff you may never see your family again. Some of the stuff you may never want to see your family again. And other times ultimately I just want to confuse you to the point of absolute insanity. And that's going to be the place where my cohorts are going to come in and probably take over your body and cause you mass self-harm to yourself and others. So yeah, we're out here. We're on the streets. Let us know if you want to come follow us. And then Neil Cavuto turns to Jesus and says, hey, why would you like people to follow you? And he's like, well, I want people to have peace. I want them to be sound. I want them to be whole. I want them to be happy with their relationships with themselves and their family. I want them to know how they were created, why they were created, and that my Father and I love them. I want them to eventually be resurrected and live forever with my Father and myself in our house.
Yes.
I want them to have a good experience in this life and forever with us after they get resurrected.
Me too.
No one would pick Satan, right? In their right mind, nobody would ever pick Satan. Okay. It's only through deception and coercion does he gain followers and lackeys, basically. So
that's right.
This is why I say I pray for these people, because if they were not coerced, like I wasn't joking earlier, they look hypnotized. And that's the practice of the occult, right? Which is a more advanced version of what you were talking about with, it starts with trauma-based mind control, but then they go into other practices that actually, what they would call modern forms of hypnotism, where it's a stronger CIA operative program where they actually create a Manchurian type candidate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to get too long-winded. I just hope people can see what we're breaking down and showing you here is confusion and deception that's perpetrated on the masses, because they just have found statistically the average person doesn't do their homework.
They don't.
They're not like you, Wes. You're thorough. You do your homework. You cite your sources. You look things up. You cross analysis. You compare. You make sure you're trying to find the truth. The average person is so distracted. They're so confused in life. They're too busy worrying about their he, him, they, them, zeeb, theirs, and what they're going to put on their LinkedIn profile, that they can't even think straight most of the day, because they're riddled with ADHD, caffeine, and sugar. So all I'm trying to say is this concept here is, we're not trying to belittle, mock. We have to show you the hard reality that the enemy, this Satan character, whom wants to kill, steal, and destroy, he will absolutely walk up to your face and tell you, "Oh no, that wasn't me. I wasn't the one that tempted Eve in the garden. No, I'm good. I'm
The
good.
father of all lies, right?
I'm a good guy.
Disguises
No,
even as an angel
I
of
didn't
light.
ask Jesus to worship me. No, that wasn't me. That was somebody else, but it wasn't me. You know what I mean? So, like, sure, there's a striking resemblance to the Matthew 4 and Luke 4 occurrence.
He's
Yeah,
even
I
got the
mean,
same scar on the corner of his mouth.
sure, my ears are pointed just like the classic. No, I'm saying, but yeah, it's just funny to me that that I just hope people understand our heart with this when we're trying to. We're not revealing this to like put people in a bad position or to embarrass their families or anything like that. Their families could be actually coerced into this along with them under the threat of death.
Yeah.
The hard reality in our culture and society is that there are agents within not just our government, but our local, not our federal, but just also our local governments that are part of an actual fraternal brotherhood that is throughout every town in this nation.
Oh, yeah.
That recruits for this exact concept of putting players in the government, putting players based off occultic ideas, is to get these guys to think it's honorable and it's a part of their goodwill towards humanity to go with the narrative and prop up the narrative in everywhere they can, and they're rewarded for doing so. These are men that do not have the truth, and so if we would hate for people to fall into this deception. WesBlaze, you and I used to believe this wholeheartedly. I'm guessing, right? I used to believe NASA wholeheartedly.
Oh yeah.
Did you?
I was, yeah. I wanted to be a paleontologist. I was super into dinosaurs, and I was all about learning about the next space missions and wanting to go to Mars if I could, and all of that. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So to me, it's like we don't want to burst your balloon just for the sake of being, obnoxious to you.
Right.
But at the same time, somebody's got to let you know that they're lying to your face. They're stealing your money to your face. Do you remember the NASA director in front of the Senate in 2019 when they were asking him why he was asking for his budget to justify his actual $20 billion budget?
Remind me.
I'll have to find the clip for you. But the guy basically, I can't remember his name, Eric something. The guy actually said, "Oh, well, we're planning to go back to the moon."
That's right. And they were asking him when, and he's just giving it circular answers.
Yep.
And yeah,
And they called him out for it. But then after they called him out, nothing happened. They rubber stamped the bill. He gets his $20 billion. He didn't have to suffer any penalty for not going to the moon. You know what I mean?
They had to
And
make
like,
it look like there was tension and that there was some kind of problem or issue. But,
was his name Eric Holder? Was that his? No, that was somebody that worked for
remember.
Obama, I think. So anyway, I'll stop now, but I appreciate you letting me rant because this stuff really frustrates me. I see how the average person doesn't know what to do with the information. Like, what do you do? Like, you come and you realize, oh my gosh, they actually are lying to me. That's literally the same guy, same age, same teeth, same nose. That's the same guy, same family, same name. Why would they lie to me? And so much so that they don't think I'm going to do anything about it. Well, because you're not going to do anything about it. You haven't done anything about it. They've been lying to you for decades, getting away with it.
Yeah.
In the beginning, they probably had to be really, really tricky, but now they just realized people don't care.
No,
Like,
they
we just
got them
keep
hook, line, and
taking their money.
sinker.
Yeah.
It's so true. But if it looks like a snake, slithers, and hisses like a snake, it's probably not a duck, right? It's probably a snake. And what
To
are
my
the
heart,
odds?
I'm excited for the day, Wes, when enough people wake up to this idea, to the reality of the fraud, and they actually see, and then by that time, there's enough in the populace that vote people into their legislatures, their state and federal legislatures, the Congress, that they realize that they defund these types of immoral and fraudulent activities, because the people of our generation that grown up and realized this is not real. There's a ton of evidence to show this is not real, that they're lying, faking, and stagecraft. So it's just interesting dynamic that I think we're gonna run into, because this whole concept of the masses awakening to this topic that our show's built on was what, 2014, 2015?
Yeah, the awakening began in a larger scale, I would say, right around that time for sure.
So what's it going to look like in 25 years when a lot of those people are now, they've heard 20 years of this conversation of all the proofs being brought before them and all the different ways that people are lying, and now they're running for office. What's it going to have? Actually, I'll tell you what it's going to look like, because I interviewed someone like that running for the governorship of Alabama just recently.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I'll have that on my show, on my channel next week.
Oh, well, I look forward to it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool.
So all of that was not a plug, but genuinely, like, I think we're in a unique time period in history, because the information that we're talking about is accessible. People can learn it. People are not as fast as we would like, but people are learning it, and before you know it, they're going to be people that are controlling the nation.
That's right. And I'm excited to be a part of it, just because, you know, like with an episode like this, a lot of these little clips and these pieces of information have been scattered in different Facebook groups and on different chat boards and message board forums and all these things. And I just had not yet seen anybody do a hour and a half or 2 hour show like we're at now, where they compiled it all in one place and resource for you to go through it all together. And I'm happy to be able to do that for you guys. I hope you got something from it. But what are the odds? 6 people, all living in the same country, 4 of which share the same names with the alleged deceased astronauts, the other 2 claiming to be their brothers, all with strikingly similar resemblances and several connected to government officials. Like I say, if it looks like a snake, talks like a snake, it's a snake. Just like that in the vector image in the logo for the NASA logo, right? It looks just like a snake's tongue. Serpent's forked tongue. So keep these things in mind, guys. Share this. Check out our links in the description. I hope you find something there that you would like to take part in, whether it be Patreon or get you some shirts, stuff like this, where you can rock the Uncommon Ground logo. That's available there. And we love you guys. You got any other final words, brother?
Just your blessing, brother.
Same to you. Same to you guys, everybody in the chat as well. Thank y'all for your support and your continued encouragement. We look forward to seeing y'all next time. It'll probably be about 2 weeks, because I think this next episode, I need to put a lot more thought and preparedness into it. So I look forward to that. So probably catch us about 2 weeks for our return.
All right.
Otherwise, y'all check out Kingdom in Context, Kingdom Cast, Sean's channel. Excellent stuff over there as well, if you haven't seen it yet. But we love y'all. Shalom from under the 7 domes, all 7 of them. And bless the Father. May he bless you. Much love.
Bye, guys.
Later on.
Human identity is no longer defined by what one does, but by what one owns.
Standing on my feet till I landed on my knees. Abandon all the things that let me fall from thee. I look abroad, I see the lawlessness increase. I know that God be looking on us, but we heartless in our deeds. Yeah, sit in our mind, wage a war against the lies. Yeah, they've been perpetrated on us since we was 5. This American dream, it blinded us all with greed. If you got ears to hear, then you got eyes to see. Come take a ride with me, with faith collide with reason. We will fight for freedom, gave my life to Jesus. Hung him high, draped in the sky. They mocked and beat him. Soon he gon' crack the sky and every eye gon' see him. Yeah. And this is a war, yeah, a war for me. And I've been fighting this war, and it's American dream. When I fell asleep, and it's American dream. I fell asleep in the American dream. Nah, 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 nah.
Hey, I came a long way from the scheming to be gleaming. Was a drug fiending with a legion of demon. Living what I thought was free, deceived by the American dream. Cause it's more like a matrix, a deception of perfection. Your mind played tricks, does away with the basics. Excuse your perception. Land of the free in a home with a brave. Not face it, a land of the damned at a home with a slave. Caged, amazed with amazing. A rat raced highway to hell and the gold is paved. But we swear we safe. Only time will tell when you hit that grave. Will your soul be raised or tossed in the blaze? Father help us cause we lost in the cost and only you deserve praise. Yeah.
And this is a war, yeah, a war for me. And I've been fighting this war, and it's American dream. When I fell asleep, and it's American dream. I fell asleep in the American dream. Nah, 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 nah.
Too many of us now tend to worship self-indulgence and consumption. But we've discovered that owning things and consuming things does not satisfy our longing for meaning.